All right. We'll let everybody in. I'm so excited for this one. Thank you everyone for coming to this event. Welcome to Powerhouse Arena's virtual events. My name is Chris. I'm the events coordinator. And tonight we are beyond proud to be hosting the launch for Do What You Want by the absolutely legendary Bad Religion and their co-writer Jim Ruland. You can buy exclusive signed copies of the book. There it is, at powerhousebookstores.com. The link is on the event page. And Jim and the band will be in conversation with Ian Windwood, and I'll introduce everyone now. Ian Windwood is the author of Smash, Green Day, The Offspring, Bad Religion, NoFX, and the 90s punk explosion. Jim Ruland has been writing for punk rock zines like Flipside since the early 90s and has written for every issue of Razorcake, America's only nonprofit independent music fanzine. Is the co-author of My Damage with Keith Morris, the founding vocalist of Black Flag, Circle Jerks, and Off. Bad Religion formed in Los Angeles in 1980 and ranks among the most influential American punk rock bands of all time. They've released 17 albums that have sold over 5 million copies, and they continue to sell out venues all over the world. I'll hand it over right now. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ian Windwood. I am broadcasting from London, the home of punk.
Hey.
My friends in Bad Religion are from all, I mean, speaking from all corners of America. We've got some in California. We've got some in the Garden State of New Jersey. We've got one in upstate New York. So it's 4 o'clock somewhere, 7 o'clock somewhere, midnight where I am. So why don't we just say that it's punk 15 in the evening and it's time to set the night on fire.
Good night.
Jim, we're going to start with you.
Thank
Do
you.
What You Want, the story of Bad Religion by Bad Religion and Jim Ruland was published today. Happy publication day to all. Chris did a little précis of your career so far, so let's get to the specifics of the book. How did you come to be involved in this project? What precisely was its genesis, please?
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to really good timing, because when Rick Marino of Bad Religion's tour manager was looking around for someone to write this book, My Damage, the book I had just written with Keith Morris, had just come out, or recently come out. And so a lot of the people were recommending me and pointing Rick in my direction. So from there, it was a matter of meeting with the members of the band and not screwing that up. And we went off to the races.
Had you met them before, Jim? They're quite weird, aren't they?
You know, I don't think, I had seen them, of course, and was a fan of their music, but I'd never met any of the members before.
At what point did Bad Religion's music enter your life? I know this because you posted it on social media, but for anyone that hasn't seen that, would you please tell us about your affiliation with the band as a listener?
Yeah, well, I grew up on the East Coast, and after I enlisted in the Navy right out of high school, I was stationed in San Diego and got exposed to California punk rock. And I made a tape that I brought with me all over the Western Pacific, and it had Bad Religion's Back to the Known on it, that 5-song EP. And I absolutely fell in love with it. And I kept that tape. I brought it with me to college, back to Virginia. And then I kept it when I went back to California. And it's just been a part of my life ever since. And I still have it.
Jamie, you're the newest member of the band, and the problem with doing something like this is if I do it chronologically, you won't get to speak to the end, till the end. So I wanted to bring you in early and say, how did Bad Religion's music enter your life? And what was it like joining the band at that point, somewhat later stage in their career?
I think I touched on it in the book. The first time I heard about the band was in high school. There was one punker dude in my high school that had a crossbuster painted on his back of his leather jacket. I asked him one day, "What's that?" And he said, "It's this cool band from California. I'll make you a tape." Back when we used to dub tapes.
Do that.
So he gave me a tape, and it was a horribly dubbed copy, but I've always been kind of a nerd for production, but it sounded really bad. And I was like, this is the worst sounding thing ever. This is so cool. And I loved it. It turned out when I got the actual copy, I was like, this is a different record. This actually sounds great. So it was a bit confusing. I thought they were this lo-fi, nasty punk band, but it just turned out I had a bad cassette copy of Suffer.
Right.
But I still liked it.
Mike, the second newest member of the band, back in the day, you used to run with Steve Jones, so you were legit. You didn't need these American upstart interlopers. Will you tell us about your time on the streets of Los Angeles with one of, if not the original punk rocker, certainly one of? Everybody.
Yeah, it says it always comes back to Steve. I was a punisher. I would get his autograph and get it again at the next show. And eventually he was like, oh, this kid's always going to be here. And when he kind of was on hard times, as I say in the book, I had a car, I had a black-faced Fender Twin and a couple Les Pauls, and I loaned them to him and eventually kind of wangled my way into his solo band and kind of, learned. I already knew how to play guitar because my mom's boyfriend was like a blues guy, but Steve Jones was my hero, and I kind of learned from him, how to tour, how to play guitar, how to not worry too much about things.
Lovely. Now, as viewers may notice, and viewers who have operated on Zoom in this difficult age, we might occasionally suffer the odd technical mishap. We will do our best to keep the show on the road as smoothly as possible. I remember first coming across Bad Religion's music. That could have been phrased better. First hearing Bad Religion's music around the time of No Control, and doing a little, I don't know how people did this in the pre-internet age, but discovering the band were from Los Angeles. And that to me was just that. They were a Los Angeles punk band. And that may also be the same for people in other parts of America. One of the things I discovered from writing my own book, and certainly from reading yours and Jim's book, is that there are many different types of LA, and that people from the Valley are sort of the rubes of LA. They're like the Staten Islanders of Los Angeles. So I'd like you to tell me, founding members, please, your status in Los Angeles and in the punk scene in 1980, and the distinctions, please.
Well, I can testify that we didn't have much status. I mean, but we were only 15, 15, 16, 17 years old, I think was the order. Jay's a little older than me. And Brett's the elder statesman of the band. And, he had the wheels when we went to the Ramones concert. I couldn't even drive at that time, I don't think. But the truth is, coming from the West Valley, you may as well have come from a different planet, because the cool people all lived over the hill in Hollywood, or somehow even Orange County, had more status than the West Valley. But because we were so young, at least personally, I didn't take offense. I didn't pay much attention to status in those days. I was just excited to be able to drive into Hollywood with my friends and see some concerts.
I like many people watching this, had a lockdown birthday, and it was during proper lockdown where you really couldn't do much here in London at all, save for shop for groceries and have an hour's exercise a day. So I had a day of movies, my fiance, and one of the movies that I watched was The Decline of Western Civilization, the punk years, which for anyone that doesn't know is a document of pretty much the first wave of punk. It's a very nihilistic film. I don't know if it's wholly representative. Brett, how did you young kids from stable homes and not well-to-do backgrounds, but respectable backgrounds. How were you? Was it a safe space? I suppose I'm asking, for kids from the Valley to rock up to these clubs in Hollywood and see a band like the Germs and X.
No, it's interesting that you put it in that way, but it wasn't a safe space. It was the opposite. It was a high-risk space, you know, and things that seemed to have almost turned upside down to where sort of a value of youth today is safety and safetyism, for lack of a better word. But I think what attracted all of us was the risk and the danger. I mean, it was scary. I would say that the decline in the punk years was pretty accurate.
Right.
In terms of how it was in LA. Would you agree, Jay?
Yes.
I mean, you know, one of the reasons to get in a band was so you could go to punk shows without getting beat up. For me, because I was interested in punk music, but I didn't know how to fight. I was actually afraid of getting in a fight.
Yeah.
And so I was sort of more of a sensitive, creative kid. And by being in a band, I could go to the shows. There was more than one time where I would go to a punk show, and there's some super scary punk rockers I didn't know. And, you know, the scene was so small and insular back then that you knew most of the punks. And if you didn't know one, there was always some kind of a risk there. And, you know, I thought I was going to get beat up, and these guys were messing with me because maybe my clothes looked too new or something. And one of the guys said, "Oh, aren't you in Bad Religion?" I said, "Yeah, I'm in Bad Religion." I said, "Oh, this guy's cool. He's in Bad Religion." And then it sort of saved me from getting beat up, you know.
Right.
That's just to give an idea. It was, but, you know, that's what, you know, so anyway, I can respect that young kids in the punk scene today really want punk to be an inclusive and safe space. And I respect that because values change. But I think what attracted us as kids from the suburbs was we were going into a dangerous place.
Right.
And we were sort of learning how to push ourselves outside our comfort zone and experiment with danger and risk taking. And that's what made the pit exciting and the punk environment kind of exciting.
Brian, rather than wait half an hour until you actually joined the band, out east in Washington, D.C., you had your own thing going on with a little spoken of band by the name of Minor Threat. That seemed to be a scene much more representative of today's values. Is that fair to say, or am I misrepresenting that?
No, it's a hybrid, because within the punk scene, there was little danger, I think, but the same idea of going to these ad hoc concerts in inconceivably terrible parts of town that were just fires on street corners and, animals, actual live animals. I saw goats. It was to think of what we went and did and had I guess we were just so young and unaware that we didn't know how dangerous what we were doing was. Right. It was a small scene too. LA was, comparatively enormous. And DC, when I first started going to shows, there might have been at the most 100 people who were interested in the same thing. So it, in and of itself, there was not like a predator class. I think it was just the small numbers made people a little more, just aware of who everybody was. But much like Brett, I had, as time progressed, and with the mouth on me that I was in situations where being in a band saved me from, aggressors.
Right. Jay, at what point did you decide that you wanted not only to be a part of the punk scene with regard going to shows, but you wanted to contribute musically? You wanted to be a band. Whose decision was that?
That was Greg's. Greg came to El Camino School. I don't know what day it was, but he said, "We've got a band." That was after he met Brett at a party. And I guess they'd had a couple rehearsals, and Greg said, "We have a band, we're starting a band." And I thought, cool, I got a guitar. No, you're playing bass. But it was, for me personally, it was, they on one of the major networks, they had 1977, the year in review, and at the end of it, they dedicated the last 10 minutes of it to the Sex Pistols.
Right.
And so I was probably 13 or 14, and I said, yeah, that's it. That's for me. These guys, I don't know what it was, but it was something that sort of answered all the questions that I was, what I wanted to play music. I just didn't know what. I knew that I wasn't good enough to be that, like Randy Rhoads type guitar player or anything, but this seemed doable. And Greg and I were already friends and had gone to, well, we were at school together every day. I think we'd even gone to a show or two when the band started. And it was just, like we talk about a lot. It's like you're the guy that's there, because at El Camino it was just Greg and I. Brett was 2 grades above us, and he went to El Camino, but I never saw him. I had no idea who Brett was, so it was pretty sparse.
One of the things that struck me when writing my own book, and Jim, it may have struck you when writing Do What You Want, is that at that time, there were no, for people in punk bands, it didn't seem to be that there was any thought for the future. It wasn't, there were no notions of making it, there were no notions of longevity, there was no notions of a career path. And the reckless decisions that Bad Religion made creatively, and the sort of haphazard way you didn't tour, particularly you played lots of shows. Would that be fair to say that you didn't really have a game plan, Greg, early doors, as we say here in the UK? There wasn't, you didn't have Q Prime management here masterminding a strategy for world domination.
No, that was a nice soft lead into what's became a very kind of a experimental album that we did after we had achieved some success. But the truth is, How Could Hell Be Any Worse was a very successful album, and we didn't even monitor it as something that was a bridge to a longer career. I know Brett came up to me and said, very early on, he said, I want this album to sound better than any punk album has ever sounded. I want it to be the best album ever. And I thought, all right, sounds good to me. But I had no idea. I had no idea how to achieve such a thing. But
that's still my goal with every record, by the way.
It's been his goal ever since.
I didn't never achieve it, but that's always what I try for.
But the truth is, the very next album was called Into the Unknown. Jay walked out of the rehearsal studio when he heard the stuff that Brett and I were bringing into the sessions, and there was not really a discussion of how this is going to affect our career. So I think it's but you could chalk it up to youthful creativity, really. I mean, I would be proud to hear a band, a young band, not care. I mean, look, I'm not a record company person, so I would be proud to hear them say, we're just going to go for it and do what we think is creative, because that's exactly what we did. We thought it was something interesting, and it's for the other people to judge whether it's interesting or catastrophic. But
for what it's worth, in my mind, I don't think Into the Unknown and The Empire Strikes First are wholly unrelated albums. I think you sort of returned and did it in the way that it should have been done on The Empire Strikes First. That's just my own observation. Jim, I don't know what your relationship to the punk scene was. You had Back to the Knowns, which I believe came out in 1985. But for anyone that wants to jump in here, it seemed to me that as 1986, 1987, 1988 ticked around, the fury of punk, the sonic fury of punk, had been overtaken by the aggressive new wave of metal bands, Slayer's Raining Blood particularly, It couldn't compete with that. The attitudinal violence had been usurped by gangster rap, and it sort of had lost its capacity to shock and awe. For shock and awe. Let me come to you, Brian, because you sort of were part of that original explosion in an explosive band. And then what were you thinking of the state of the punk union, as I suppose the band, little unknown to all, were preparing to record Suffer?
At that exact time, I, like many people, had sort of lost interest.
Right.
The last record that I had recorded in a punk format was the last Agnassi record, Field Day, which was sort of our Into the Unknown. It was a great departure from the earlier punk records we had done, and I think it was just the record sounds a little. I think we were just a little disillusioned. I think that the it seemed like the excitement had worn out, and I liked the idea of Slayer and Metallica, but I never really latched onto that either. I think I just went in a more retrospective way and got interested in hard rock. But yeah, it didn't really seem like anything was happening at all. And, thank God for Bad Religion.
Well, this is the point that I wanted to make. The connective tissue between the old and the new is Bad Religion. And also the concept of longevity was, it seems to me, introduced by Bad Religion. As you prepared to record Suffer, subconsciously, I know less so consciously, if at all consciously, subconsciously, did you know what you were doing with regard being in the right place at the right time and having the skills to do the job, being the right band? Brett, you can go for that. You seem to be already have an answer to this. Brett, your sounds now. Here we go.
No, we didn't ever know what we were doing, and there was never anything cynical in our, in our creativity. We simply were, four friends making a record. I think we were five at that point, because Hetson had come in to replace me, and then I joined everybody to make Suffer, and it was just a lot of fun. I mean, nobody was thinking, oh, there's a real vacuum right now, and there's a real need for this kind of a record. Nothing at all. It was simply, right around that time, Greg had been going to school, and I'd been going to school to be a recording engineer and experimenting with drugs and other things. Sort of the LA underground was interesting back then. And Greg called me up. He's like, Brett, you can't believe it, but these shows are really fun, and we've got a show at Gilman Street, and Hetson can't play it. You should play it. And I did, and it was super fun. And then I don't remember whose idea it was, but we all agreed, man, that was fun. Let's make a new record. And what I said to the guys was, while I've been out of the band, I've been learning how to be a recording engineer. I've been literally living in West Beach Recorders, doing 100-hour weeks recording bands for no money.
That's right.
And I know how to do it now. So if you want to write a record, I can make it. It will sound pretty cool. You know what I mean? That was about as much as there was to it. And then Greg said, I have 2 new songs. And we went to this place called Uncle, where we were rehearsing. And Greg taught the band 2 new songs. And then we said, hey, let's do this next Thursday. And we came back the following Thursday, and I brought 2 new songs. And then we came the next Thursday, and Greg brought 2 new songs. And each time we rehearsed, the first time we had 2 songs, the next time we had 4 songs, the third time we had 6 songs. We got to 15 songs, we went in and recorded them. And literally that was as much thought as we put into it.
Jay, as someone that was hearing these songs in their embryonic form and then contributing to how they sounded being played with the band, were you aware at all that something significant, not that it would become widely significant, but musically significant in and of itself, was being born here?
I knew that what we were doing was good. I knew that what Greg and Brett were bringing in was good, and the feeling was that all of the mistakes that we had made, just personally, business wise, band wise, we were putting those to rest with this, and we were doing it just for ourselves. It was all of the music that we had always talked that we wanted to hear. It just seemed like we were doing something good for ourselves. And every time, like Brett said, every time there was 2 new songs, it wasn't like we learned them and then just went home. We learned them and then played them 60 times because it was just so much fun to play.
Right.
I remember that vividly. I remember just wanting to play these again and again and again, and it was never tiring. It was like every time you played it again, it was a new experience, and you learned something new, and you did something new. It was a fantastic time.
I have something of a photographic memory, Jay, and around this time, the band released a long-form, very inventive long-form live video called Along the Way. And in an interview segment of this video, you claimed that you were a movie stuntman at the time.
I wasn't a stuntman. I was working on motorcycles for stuntmen.
Could you explain what that gig was like? Because I've always wanted to know. What was that gig?
He's a stuntman now, though.
Okay.
Okay, so basically, any kind of television show, Chips, or movies like the Indiana Jones and the Temple of whatever, where there were motorcycles that they would jump over bridges and blow up. That the guy that I worked for, he was a stunt man, and so his job as he aged out of that was just building motorcycles to be crashed.
Right.
And we would be at the site, and we would just rebuild them because the director would say, "Okay, let's do that again." Okay, this motorcycle is not going to make it, but you'd figure out a way to make it work for 3 or 4 crashes and replace it with another one.
Jay, before I move on, you were obviously rubbing shoulders with famous people in the TV and movie industry. Who was the biggest arsehole that you came across?
I don't know his name, but it was the director of a movie called Ford Fairlane.
Rennie Harling is his name.
He came and yelled at me.
I know that. Rennie Harling.
He came and yelled at me and said, "You'll never work in this town again," which I couldn't believe he actually said to me. And I just said, "I don't really care. I don't want this job. I don't care. I'm in a band."
It was the movie with Andrew Dice Clay. I can't believe.
Yes, it was.
It was, yeah. It was him that never worked in the town again. Greg, in order to truly get, I mean, you were a naive band, I think, at the time. I think that's safe to say.
I was a what?
A naive band at the time. You had naivety. Okay. And you came to Europe, Germany in particular, which was an eye-opening experience. Why was that so, please, for anyone that doesn't know?
Well, I would say that I don't know if it's naivety or if it's just, there was not a lot of connection between the German underground punk scene and the Los Angeles club scene that we emerged from. Even in 1989, when we went there for the first time, we were kind of, we were trusting this lunatic in Connecticut who said, you guys should come to Germany. It's going to be huge. And we had nothing better to do, literally. So we said, all right, you got to wait till summertime though, because I'm in school. And then he put together a 12 or 15 city tour in probably 16 days. And, they sent us the airline tickets. So that is naivety in many respects. I'll accept that badge. But we went with open minds, and we were blown away because our records had gotten there ahead of us. And these people, not just in Germany, but in Amsterdam, and I guess we played in Belgium, at that time, and everybody loved us. I mean, it was an unbelievable experience. It gave us this feeling of, we got to do this next year, because we had just come off the Suffer tour in '88 around the United States, and we were playing to, in some places, we were playing to 5 people,
Right.
literally.
Right.
And so we said, this is great because people have heard of us here and they like us. Then we went to the UK.
Not so good.
The UK, I must say, took a while. It took a while, because at that time, I think they were still sore that, indeed the punk scene was pretty much dust at that moment. And they couldn't fathom that it was gaining traction again.
Yeah.
And so whatever was big in Germany we found this weird pendulum swing for the next decade. If it was really big one year in Germany, it'd be really dead in the UK. But then some years, the UK would have this exuberance that we hadn't seen before. And Germany was just sort of lukewarm that year. So
Right. Okay. Do any of you, the 3 members that were in the band at the time, remember, I believe it was your second show in London. It was, I'm speaking from Camden Town, if anybody knows the area. And just up the street, there is a club called The Dome, which is in Tufnell Park. And you played there, supporting Against the Grain. Generator had been recorded. Bobby was in the band as the drummer. And it was the hottest show that I've ever seen. It was so hot, Greg, that you played topless. And I remember Jay, you telling me that it felt like your brain was melting into your ears. Does any of you remember that? It was like in July. Tell us your memories, please. But it was murder in there.
What the opening band was Doctor something?
Doctor and the Crippens.
Yes, something. I don't remember. Anyway, stage was like what? Stage was 2 feet high.
Right.
It was above a bar. It was packed.
Yeah.
It was one of those punk rock shows that you just, everybody's melting, but you just keep playing. Greg had learned when we were in Germany that like we coming from America, there'd be like club capacity, 500 people. In Germany, it was like club capacity. How many can you fit in there?
Right.
All of them. Okay. And Greg would go, we're going to stop for a minute so we can breathe. So we'd sort of learned our way around, like, we're going to take a break, whatever that meant.
Yeah.
Right.
The first German words I learned was open the windows.
Right.
Open the fenster.
You were, Brian, I'd like to tell the story, please. You Bad Religion, as you can see, I'm not going to walk you slowly through all of the albums, but through No Control, Against the Grain, Generator, Recipe for Hate, you became, whether by accident or design, with the infrastructure of Epitaph and how that allowed you to operate as a band with Greg's studies, your studio work, Jay being a stuntman, obviously, you became scene leaders. You proved that this could be done, that you could draw a crowd, and that you could incrementally, and in some cases more than incrementally, increase your fan base, and that you could do this for a job. You recorded Recipe for Hate. Brian, you went down to the Epitaph office, which I believe at the time was on Santa Monica Boulevard. You picked up a copy of Recipe for Hate and put it in your car. Would you please regale the viewers with the story of what happened next, please?
Well, this is a true story, and I did get a cassette of Recipe for Hate, and I put in my car, and I was immediately overwhelmed with the music itself, because I had kind of lost track of Bad Religion. I mean, I was at Epitaph. I had some friends who worked there, so we had, on one hand, we had this incredible record that just was very, very hard for me to take. I mean, I recall saying, God, if I had just not broken up Dag Nasty, this could be me. Right. I mean, I really, really thought that. And I loved it, and I kept playing it. I just kind of left it in the car, and I think maybe I left it in there for a couple of days, and I was going to listen to something else, and it had stuck in the car. It had frozen. The deck would not open. The only tape I could play was Recipe for Hate, which, that sends a lot of signals, I would say.
Yeah.
But it's actually true. And when I sold the car, it had the tape still in it.
Which is sort of the vehicular equivalent of selling someone a haunted house. How I would say that. You were hustling, Brian, to get even when there was no vacancy in the band, you were hustling to get in the band. That's correct, isn't it? You were hitting up Hetson behind Brett's back, and you were hitting up Brett behind Hetson's back. Is that fair?
I think that's accurate. I mean, this Recipe for Hate was a huge thing. And I really saw that, then I became very interested in Bad Religion. And I was very friendly with Hetson because we were both sort of scene veterans, and we hung out at the same places. And so I saw him more often, and I would always pepper him with the, please, if Brett leaves, let me, give me the call, please, right, sir. And I saw Brett less frequently, but Brett had put out a Dag Nasty record, sort of a posthumous record. So I had a relationship with him because Epitaph had put the Dag Nasty record out, and some friends who worked for him. And so the times I saw him, I made it clear that I would be available. If some horrible accident would befall Hetson,
sure.
I would be happy to step in, ready to go. So yeah, I did. This is all true. And it turns out that the phone call was from Greg Hetson and from Greg Graffin saying that Brett had decided to step out. And here we are, 26 years later.
Brett, given that Brian replaced you, I'm being careful not to reveal too closely stories that are in the book. I just don't want to spoil the story for anybody that doesn't know it. But what is known for sure is that you left the band in 1994. What did Brian bring to the band that you could not?
Guitar playing ability.
The solos.
No, just guitar playing talent is something he brought to the band that I've never had. And I'm not joking. I do not consider myself to be a good guitar player.
Okay.
I've been endlessly frustrated with my own guitar playing, and Brian is a virtuoso, and I'm a fan of guitar music. So, I thought that, honestly, when I heard that Brian was replacing me, I was so happy because he had the, the rock and roll or the punk rock pedigree. He had the talent. He needed the gig. He's a good dude. So, honestly, I couldn't have imagined a better scenario.
It's difficult not to discuss the career of Bad Religion, the lifespan of Bad Religion, without talking about 1994. In 1993, when I was a much younger music journalist, I saw Bad Religion play at just up the street in Kentish Town at what was then the Town and Country Club, and it was not a well-attended show. A couple of weeks later, I went to see NoFX with the Offspring supporting at a small club over in Islington, a couple of miles away. Very poorly attended show. And I wrote an article, because I always had my finger on the pulse, that said, this music's really good, but I think the scene is dying. I think it's probably run out of gas. This is, I should say, before the internet age. So I was purely writing from my own experience. And then in 1994, the world turned upside down. It turned upside down with Green Day. Commercially, it turned upside down with The Offspring. Of course, there was Bad Religion. There was Rancid. Social Distortion had started to happen. There was NoFX. I don't mind who jumps in here. So I'm not going to ask at one person, but I'd like your personal recollections of what was, I think, probably, aside from the original 76, 77, the most, or maybe more than that, the most remarkable year in the history of punk rock. Greg, you look like you're going to go.
No, I was going to pass it to
Okay.
Brett, because I think Brett was at the,
At the coalface.
Brett was kind of at the nexus of that activity. Honestly, 1994 was the year that I actually had to take a leave of absence from my PhD program, just because we were getting too many offers. It would have been irresponsible not to honor the offers that we were getting to play shows. But in terms of the business that was going on, I was so distant from it. I was deep in my evolution studies, and Brett was right there on the cusp of it, really. So I think that's why I was going to pass to Brett.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of tired of hearing myself talk about this era, but
that's why I didn't go directly to you.
I'll talk on it briefly, but I'd love to hear someone else's take on it. I'd love to hear Jamie's or Jay's experience, but kind of what was happening, right before the punk explosion in the mid '90s there was that, and it's sort of like what's happening today a little bit, is that there was no rock on the radio. There are all these sort of English synth bands and popular music, and punk was sort of wildly popular in the underground. Maybe not in England, but in Germany and the U.S. It was very very popular. But mainstream media and major labels were ignoring it, and so then what happened was that grunge was just sort of like punk's evil stepsister, or maybe benign stepsister, whatever you want to think of it, was going parallel path. Sub Pop was having a lot of putting out a lot of cool records at the same time as Epitaph, and Nirvana had a breakthrough. Nirvana broke through at radio, and that was, as I recall, that was the first really guitar band, with aggressive guitars that had broken through on American, rock radio for a while. I'm not talking about classic rock, but I'm talking about, the stations kids listen to, the young radio stations. And so Nirvana opened the door. And so, some grunge bands had started in the early '90s, some grunge bands started getting real popular. But anyway, I guess, in my view, sort of the major labels and the commercial radio stations started looking around with, hey, guitar music is something. Look, that's popular again. And of course, punk rock is the most, sort of the catchiest, most aggressive, some of the best, guitar-driven rock and roll music that there is. And so I think I think Nirvana sort of opened the door. And then groups like Green Day, Offspring, Rancid walked through the door. And the rest is history, and we had the punk explosion.
Jay, the band's years on Atlantic Records, because of the success, the enormous commercial success, did the label have unrealistic commercial, not artistic, commercial expectations for Bad Religion?
I think so. And the people that we sort of went there with went to different places.
I hear that story so often.
Right, and so we ended up in a pretty difficult scenario of sort of being the band that didn't break through. We didn't do the big numbers, and it was the palpable disappointment when you would talk to them instead of the excitement of calling someone and saying, getting right through in that conversation, you'd have to be on hold for 10 minutes, and then, the conversation was just sort of like, well, we're putting our resources with another band, which at the time I can even say the band that I kept getting told that they were getting all of our time was POD. And it's fine, but it was like, to be told that was like, that's cool. The one thing that Brett and I had even spoken about when we were at Epitaph was, if we could just double our sales, what we were doing at Epitaph, that would be a total win for us as a band.
Right.
But when you're with people who see that, doubling our sales wasn't a win for them because they had higher expectations, and that was difficult. It was sort of difficult to meet those expectations and then deal with their lack of support.
Right. Greg, you made some remarkable music on Atlantic. You made The Grey Race, which is probably my top 3 favorite Bad Religion albums. You can just see the effort that was put into it, into you covering the span that was previously occupied by you and Brett. But when the relationship with and you worked with Todd Rundgren, of course, when the relationship with Atlantic came to an end, how long did it take the members of the band to think, well, where are we going to go, and would we really go anywhere else but what I would romantically describe as home?
Yeah, I mean, I remember being fairly, I think Jay and I had a talk, and at around 2000, after the Blink-182 tour, and we just thought, what should we do now? I don't know. It's like,
okay,
we finished our obligation. We had 7 albums or something, or I don't know how many albums we had on Sony and Atlantic, but we had finished our obligation there. Jay and I weren't, sure about next year's tour. Brett and I had gotten together and written a song together for the New America album, and everything was sort of up in the air. But I do remember talking to Brett, and I know Jay called him as well separately, and just said, hey, it's kind of, we're done with the majors. I mean, why shouldn't we come back to Epitaph? And I think Brett immediately was sort of thinking the same thing at that time. And I know that Brett was excited about writing some new stuff. And that was, the next album that emerged was a great album, Process of Belief. And it emerged from numerous writing trips together. And, Brett and I spent a lot of time writing that album together. And I think he was getting excited about the prospect of releasing it. We should ask him.
Well, I mean, we might describe this as the third act, as the third act of Bad Religion. And the albums that you've recorded since your return, since the return of the Prodigal Sons, The Process of Belief, The Empire Strikes First, which, if you were to point a gun at my head, being Americans, I assume you're all armed and carrying, I would probably nominate as my favorite Bad Religion album. Brian, how would you describe, in terms of its quality, because you were aboard for the majority of the Atlantic years, and for this third act, in terms of quality and in terms of quality, how would you describe and how would you speak about? I'm not wording this very well. Speak about the Epitaph albums in the second time at the label. I guess he's not going to talk about.
He's muted.
You might be muted, Brian.
I'm not muted anymore.
There we go, young man.
Working with this phone is so disheartening. What I noticed, what you're hearing with the third era, as you call it, is the excitement of Brett and Greg, who have always been growing as songwriters, working together and creating, I think, Bad Religion music that's just simply on a different level. I mean, I'm kind of biased because these are my 2 favorite songwriters, but the energy was electric around Process of Belief. And what was amazing to me is that continued on through every up into the Age of Unreason. There's just something undeniable about the combination. I think that they push each other to do better. And I think best of all is that when Brett came back, I got to stay. I think that was a huge one for me personally. On a personal note, I enjoyed that.
Yeah,
that was nice.
That was nice.
A three guitar attack. You're the Iron Maiden punk. So I want to talk, please, about, and apologies to Jim, and apologies to Mike, and apologies to Jamie. It's very difficult to bring you in when we're talking about a period in which you weren't involved. One of the striking things about Age of Unreason, which I'm sure everyone watching this will know, was the album, the most recent album that was released last year, is its sense of moral fury and disgust, actually, in songs like End of History, The Paranoid Style, and Big Black Dog, about what is going on in America and the person that is masterminding what is going on in America. And as we approach election season, and Mike and Jamie, please feel free to jump in here. I just wondered, is America in peril here? Because it seems to me like it might be. This seems to be how bad things, really bad things begin to start or really begin to roll.
Well, Ian, I will remind you of a little, we took a drive, didn't we, about a year and a half ago, and or maybe it was 2 years ago now, but I remember you looking at me. We were in a taxi.
That's right.
And you said, Greg, you mark my words, we are entering into a period in the UK that is the beginning of a very dark chapter in our history.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I very much do, yeah.
And how has that turned out?
Well, I mean, the thing about the COVID crisis is that it's a great bullshit detector. I don't think it's any coincidence that it's running riot in America. I don't think it's any coincidence that it accounts for deaths in the UK account for almost 10% of the COVID deaths worldwide. So I would say that it's gone from abstract to literal, is how I would explain it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think it is in that sense a good gauge, but I think the peril in America, especially even in the last few weeks, you know, the problems that are emerging with the questioning of whether a democracy can function under such mismanagement is probably the most germane to your question.
Yeah.
And that's why right now I really am focused on and hoping, you know, that the election, I think if you ask that question in a few months, I would give you a more definitive answer.
Right.
But if you know, I'm very worried about this election, and I think it is pivotal in answering the question of if we're in dire. I think we're in some, you know, the warning light is starting to turn red, but this election is really important, and you know, I'd like to come back to this question in a few months.
Okay, and if anybody else would like to, I've got one eye on the clock here, but if anybody else feels they have anything to say about this most pressing of issues, please do so now.
Yeah, I'll say that I'm not as sanguine as Greg, although I'm known to be unreasonably sanguine. But I can't predict anything, but you know, I'm worried. And I think that we could be in for a crisis in November, and we could be in for anything from a peaceful transition of power to a complete societal collapse. I honestly, nothing would surprise me anymore. Obviously, I can't predict, but I'm worried. You know, I think we have a guy in the White House who's very clearly broadcast his intentions not to leave office. No matter what happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and he's done that publicly, and he said a lot of other insane things that turned out to be pretty sincere in the past. So, you know, let's see what happens. But yeah, it's not a good time to be apolitical. That's for sure. I'll say that. And anybody who cares about this country needs to get out there and vote.
Good to see the return of the birther movement, by the way. What a pleasant surprise that was.
That's uniquely American.
Yes, very much so. Just quickly, there was a man that was in the band for 30 odd years. He provided moral support. I know he didn't contribute to the book. He provided moral support in the 80s when the group needed it, and was a member for many years and very much part of the band's identity. I just wondered if anybody, Jay perhaps, would like to, or anyone that played with I'm speaking of course, Greg Hetson, about his contribution to Bad Religion's cause, seeing as he's no longer around in this context to talk about it.
Well, everybody reached out to him to be part of this, and he just decided not to do.
No, I know, but regardless of that his time in the band, what did he bring to Bad Religion, and how did he empower the band?
Well, I can speak for, I think,
Please do.
everybody when I say we miss him terribly. He was a dear friend, and you know, I personally think that he would have really contributed to this project, and but ultimately I respect his decision not to be a part of it. But you know, he was a friend, and professionally it didn't work out, and that happens a lot in a professional situation. And you know, he's probably, you know, I feel a great sense of great burden that I'll carry with me for a long time, having to make a professional decision over a friendship. And that's, you know, nobody should have to be in that position, but the truth is that it happens in life. And, you know, I miss the guy.
When you guys started out all those years ago, 40 years ago, happy 40th birthday, of course. Punk rock was pretty much the most immediate way to get your thoughts and your what you wanted to say into the bloodstream. You could form a band pretty quickly. It was quite easy to play. Boom, you're on stage. Now there are even faster ways to do it. A tweet, a vlog, so many different ways, and social media. I just wondered, is punk rock still on the vanguard that it once was? Anyone, Jim, Jamie, Mike, please, I feel bad because I've not brought you in as much as I would have liked to. Anybody that would like to answer that? Jim, you're the writer. Is punk rock still on the vanguard that it was when it was really the only game in town for pissed off people that wanted to say, I matter?
I think the label of punk rock has shifted around quite a bit over the years and splintering into different sections, but underground music will always thrive. As long as there are kids and amps and a place and, you know, place to play and pissed off and the energy to express themselves through their music, their words, they're gonna play. So my answer would be absolutely.
I mean, if only we had someone that ran a punk rock record label to help answer this question. Oh, look, we do. Brett. I'm speaking, of course, of Jeff Abata. Brett. Brett, it's no longer the only game in town, punk. Is it still the vanguard? And if it's not the vanguard, and I suspect it's not in the way it was, because how can it be? What is it?
Cloud rap.
I don't know what that is.
It's rap music. It's
right.
It's a form of hip hop. Punk rock can't be on the vanguard. We're all almost 60 years old. You know, it's rock and roll. To my kids, anything with guitar and drum is punk rock. You know, that we had the Grammys on at our house, and Steven Tyler was up there doing an Aerosmith song, and my 11-year-old daughter said, "Look, Daddy, those guys are trying to play punk rock. They're terrible." I'd explained to her that just because it has guitars doesn't mean it's punk rock, you know. But you have to have some perspective. You know, I mean, it's easy. You know, when you're 58 years old like I am, it's easy to look in the mirror and go, "Who's that old man?" You know, and to walk around all day and thinking about yourself as that 20-year-old that you remember yourself to be.
Right.
But the truth is that, we put out our first record 40 years ago, okay? When I was a kid in a band in 1980, do you know what came out 40 years before that? Bing Crosby's White Christmas, right? That's what it came out 40 years before that. So no, we're not the vanguard of anything. But we put out some kick-ass records, and I think they, you know, and I think they hold up, and I'm really proud of them, and I think that goes for our new album, and it goes for our first album.
Mike, surprisingly, punkers or punk rockers have proven very partial to nostalgia, which is something that sits very uneasily with me. Bad Religion, while acknowledging the great body of work, push forward. You seem not to be a nostalgic band. Is that your take on the situation?
Muted.
Oh,
I mean, I tried to bring him in, look.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
I was saying, Brett mentioned Aerosmith, and I would say, I mean, as much as I think we all dug Aerosmith in their heyday, what they did after that was sort of musically backwards, I would say. Whereas, I mean, as an outsider, I would look at Bad Religion, and they always were moving forward or trying to do something new and interesting, and not just recreate the same thing.
Right.
So whether that's cutting edge, whatever, but long story short, they were trying to make a good record and not remake a record from the past. Whereas I wish Aerosmith would have tried to remake Rocks, but there you go.
If you were all 15 to 17 years old today, would you form a band? Would you form Bad Religion? Greg?
That's an example of a very creative, impossible to answer question. Because all I can speak to is when I was 15.
Sure.
And you're not aware of your cultural milieu at the time.
Okay.
Today, I'll tell you this. Listen, it's easier than ever to form a punk band if you want to do it. Back then you had to be like, I had no equipment. Like, I didn't even know where does one go to buy a vocal microphone?
Right.
If it wasn't for Brett had a PA. Like, because he was in a band before me.
Trainer, a Canadian solid state Trainer PA.
Yeah, but it came with a microphone, and I was like,
Radio Shack had mics.
Oh my God, that's what people sing through that thing. And I felt like, this is what I've wanted my whole life. Where did you get this? And today you can go to Best Buy and set up, like, you can buy a cheap laptop for like $600 and, or ask for it from Santa Claus or something. I don't know, but you can set up an entire recording studio in a room like this. And so I think if I was 15, I would have a lot more of the technology at my disposal. I know, Brett was always into collecting, and all the guys in the band were really into their equipment. They had this secret knowledge of where to get it.
Right.
But it's easier than ever to do it now. And I can't imagine, there's more reasons to, there's more reasons to form a counterculture movement or write songs that are provocative today than there was back then. There's, it's easier too.
Jim, what are your hopes for the book? Now that it's airborne and that it no longer belongs to you. I know this from being an author myself. It's out there now. It's not yours. What are your hopes for it?
Well, I hope it becomes the most popular book about people who wander the land since the Bible.
Okay, that's modest. But if okay, good.
I think we can do that. I think that's doable.
Yeah,
okay.
That's right in our wheelhouse.
And my final question, because I see I've run slightly over time, I hope you all got advance notice of this question. You're reaching an age when people say, how long are you going to go on for? I'm not going to ask that because I don't think that's a particularly relevant question. And who knows? But imagine you were playing your last ever Bad Religion show. You knew it was going to be the last ever Bad Religion show. And I'd like each of the members of the band, and Jim, you can play along as well. And I only say that because if you do, then I can. Which song, regardless of what the audience wants to hear, which song would you like to play as the last Bad Religion song that is played live? And each of you gets to choose. And we'll start with the newest member and work back to the original three. Actually, Jim, we'll start with you. What would you like them to play at the last ever Bad Religion concert, the last song?
You know, I have like a very long list of songs that I have never.
This is a loaded gun. We don't have time for that.
Yeah, but, no. But I think like there's a lot of songs I personally would love to hear, and but I think it has to be "Fuck Armageddon, This Is Hell." I mean, that's such an epic song, and I've heard them close out shows that left me with such a incredible feeling that I would want everyone to have that feeling too. I mean, that would be my answer.
I would like to hear Beyond Electric Dreams because I'm nothing if not an obscurist. Jamie, last ever song that you ever get to play with the band at their final ever concert, what is it going to be?
God, that's tough because we play all the good songs, but oh man, anything off Into the Unknown, I'm just fascinated with.
Okay. So we'll go for Into the Unknown in its entirety.
I like that record. So any really, we get to do one. We've been doing one song off of that, so that's great. But just any song off of that, I would just love to do for me.
Okay, Mike.
I'm gonna go with the song I want to play and not want to play, which would be "Fuck Armageddon," because I might fuck up that intro.
Okay.
And then Jay would look at me, and I would go to my deathbed knowing I like fluffed one of those 3 fucking notes, which would be okay.
Okay.
It does happen.
Brian, 26 years in the band, one last show, final song. What is it going to be, buddy?
Yeah.
I'll choose a song that is both thematically appropriate, but I think mine would be "Walk Away."
Okay.
I think that there's a little of, I'm feeling a little like old Mr. Fletcher, you know, as time goes on. And I think lyrically, and of course the title would be an appropriate last song.
Okay, and we're down to the final 3, the original 3 members of the band, the Gibb brothers of punk, Jay Bentley. It is the last time on stage. Who knows how old you will be? Who knows what state of disrepair your body will be in? You have one song. What is it going to be?
Brett and Greg know that it's Louie Louie.
The Bad Religion song. Come on, play the game.
Oh, no, the game is it's Louie Louie making people leave because, oh my God, they won't stop playing it. Because every Black Flag show ended with that song. Remember?
Okay.
And it went forever.
Forever.
Brett, we're coming to you penultimately because you took time away from the band. Greg is the one that has appeared at every show, so he gets top billing. Brett, we have one final Bad Religion show. I think people have got the point of the game now. What is the song going to be, Brett?
Can penultimate be an adverb? Penultimately?
Jim's the writer. Jim's the writer.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I say yes. I say if it can be one anywhere, it would be in a Bad Religion interview.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it would, for me, it would be Sorrow.
Good song. The song John Lennon wanted to write when he was writing Imagine. Good choice. Greg, Professor Greg Graffin in upstate New York. You're holding the mic for the last time. It's the last song. What's it going to be?
Well, I'd tell the audience, since the penultimate song was Sorrow, I would like you to wade into the changing tide as you leave the auditorium. That would be my song, Changing Tide.
Okay, fantastic. I'm not sure you've quite understood the rules of the game. You're all at different concerts and you all get your last song. This is brilliant. On this note, we've gone a little bit over time. Thank you, everybody from Bad Religion and from the Bad Religion family that has participated in this. Thanks to everyone for watching. I'd like to give a particular shout out to the Facebook group Bad Religion Yay Hey, of which I am a member, who keep me endlessly entertained with thoughtful contributions about your music. And I hope everybody is safe and well wherever in the world you find us. I hope the band is happy. I hope it continues for a long time. And I hope that we get through this. Thank you, everybody.
And I hope that you buy the book by clicking the link.
Oh, yes, I beg your pardon. One last time, do what you want. Bad Religion with Jim Ruland, published today on Da Capo Press. Enjoy. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ian.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. I
Bye-bye.
miss you all, and hopefully we will see you all soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
I'm not leaving.